The sound of almost the weekend. This is another edition of Take Two. This is Heidi Hatch with KUTV 2 News. Maura Carabello in the house. And Greg Hughes has graced us with his presence again this week.
Yes,
Thanks
I'm
for being
back,
here.
Baby. I'm back.
And you're all warmed up because you've been doing radio all day long. We're recording in the evening again just because we're trying it out.
Tell us again what you do.
I am Citizen Greg Hughes on Utah's Talk Radio 105.9 KNRS.
Oh my gosh, does your wife love that you have a radio voice now?
I don't even think that's right.
My
voice is definitely not a radio voice. No, she does. She does actually listen.
Does she enjoy it?
She gives constructive criticism. So actually, it's good. It's good to have her listening and
do you listen to it?
No, I can't stand the sound of my
own
voice.
No. Do you listen to your wife's constructive criticism?
I do. Yep, she's good. She listened to talk radio forever, so she's good. Does she listen to Take Two? No, she doesn't listen to Take Two. If I'm being honest, she doesn't listen to this. She listens to that show. I appreciate the honesty. She listens to that show. She used to listen to Rush Limbaugh when he was alive, and she's a consumer of talk radio, and she actually sends me content too, which is helpful during the day. So
I like that. My husband's good at that too. He sends me content. For example, last night, like at 12:30, and he's like, "Hey, have you seen this earthquake that happened?" And I'm like, "No."
I felt that.
Did you? You guys are both in the East Bend.
I did.
No, I read about it this morning and didn't feel it. It wasn't very far away either, right?
Yeah, because it was up kind of in the Heber City area, and it seems like people probably from like Springville up kind of maybe to Draper, Sandy. I saw people saying they felt it. Some Salt Lake.
So no, this is exactly. So when I was in San Diego when they just had that earthquake, I was on a plane and I didn't feel that at all, and that was a bigger one. But
you were in the sky.
I was okay. I should explain that a little more. I was in a plane,
science,
on the runway, taxiing, waiting to take off.
This makes more sense.
And everyone's phones, we hadn't hit. A lot of us hadn't hit our airplane mode yet, and they started to squeal like an Amber Alert. All our phones start to siren. And I look at my phone and it says there's an earthquake, watch for overhang, the thing's falling or something like that. And it was within a minute of when it was going to happen when I looked in hindsight. But I had never felt anything. I had a friend that was leaving at the same time that was on a flight going to Vegas. I was coming back to Salt Lake. And he said he could see the wing of his plane moving. And he said, but it's not windy. I don't get it. And then they get on the air. The captain got on and said there's been an earthquake. But he was hot on getting out of there. So he said they're going to check make sure that the runway hasn't been damaged. And if it's not, we are leaving. And we left quickly, got off the ground very quickly.
And then last night you felt it?
But last night, it's after midnight. I'm a night owl. I'm watching TV in my office. And sometimes when my kids...
Is that in air quotes you were watching TV or you actually were watching TV?
No, I was watching TV.
Okay, it wasn't like a Netflix and chill kind of situation. You're like, is this an earthquake or...
Well, no, I binge watch TV. I watch these Netflix shows and stuff. So I'm watching TV, and sometimes when my kids come into the house, they're adults now, but they slam the garage door in my office is adjacent to it. It'll make the wall shake a little bit, so it shakes. It felt bigger than that. Like I felt a big jolt, and I didn't hear the door slam. But that's all. It wasn't like we're shaking right now. It was just like what you would feel if someone came in, but it was like a big one, and I could hear that. If you ever remember with the big one in 2020, if you heard the low kind of hum or roar, I heard something, but I was watching this kind of freaky show, and I'm like,
you thought of
is my imagination, is this like,
it's like you're in the expensive seats at the movie theater?
Is this like the Amityville horror? I'm just like kind of imagining this because it's kind of a scary show I'm watching. Maybe I just kind of imagined it, so I just blew it off because I thought, oh, whatever. And then the next morning, I got a text from Sophie saying, a screenshot saying there was, and I felt that. Yeah. I absolutely felt that.
Sophie went to Post Malone's concert.
She did. How'd you know?
Jealous.
Were you there?
No.
I was going to say, you're cool enough you would have.
Can you
hear it from your house?
We live close
enough.
Like I knew they were late because I was walking the dog and thinking, why am I not listening to Jelly Roll right now?
Yeah.
And so I heard they started late, and you can hear it if we open the doors. So I did listen for a bit from
free
my
concert
balcony.
Ticks. I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the thing. They start late all the time now. I'm getting old enough that
and
like
they go until like midnight to
like,
just add to the old.
I
they
had
start at 8 and
I knew 3
finish
people
at
that were there.
12:30.
They sent me videos from where they were, and so I felt like I was at that concert, even though I wasn't. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, we got lots of business to talk about this week. I just saw an article tonight that Kamala Harris is weighing a run for governor or a presidential bid. Maura, if you were her advisor and said, this is the one where you've got, put your money here, all the eggs in one basket, where does she have the best chance?
Given that she has no shot to be our next president, I'm going to tell her to double down on the governor of California.
That
and
is
maybe
brutally
she
honest and true.
parlays that into a 2034. Is that a choice? 20, not the Olympic year. Let's go with a 2038. I don't know when the next. So I say governor
She
would
might be
probably.
kind of old by then.
Governor might be the best shot for her right now. I think a reround is going to be really hard for her.
Yeah.
She gave a speech. It
Today?
had all the. I think it was yesterday. It had all the trimmings of Trump's a Nazi and the democracy's being stolen, all that stuff that they all say. But her best part of her speech was talking about those cool elephants at the San Diego Zoo that all went into that defensive position when they felt that earthquake.
Yeah, I love that video.
Right?
Yeah.
So I liked her talking about that because I actually loved that. I thought that was one of the cutest things I've ever seen, one of the coolest things, with all those elephants backing up to protect the little ones. And she talked about that for some reason, and I'm not sure how she was, threading that needle. But if that's the best I can get out of that speech is the San Diego Zoo elephant scene.
Yeah.
Well,
I
she
think
connected with you then.
Yeah.
She's not coherent like Trump is, sure.
Yeah,
but
no. But let me just say, I want to finish my point. She won statewide race for Attorney General. She won statewide race for U.S. Senate. That's her crowd. That's her vibe. That's her people. If they stay as wacky in California as they've been, I think that's the race she could win.
I'll have to pull my kids on that. I officially, as of yesterday, have 2 kids living in California out of 2, which is the weirdest feeling.
that is crazy.
I know. I thought I raised them right, where you live in Utah or
left
go
coast.
to Florida on the beach. But no, they've chosen California as their place to be. So we'll see how that goes. Another thing really quickly, all week long, people have been like, my sources are saying National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is out. This is after Signalgate. Turns out he's out, but he's actually in. Instead of just being out, he's going to the United Nations. And is this a good move, or should he be in trouble, Greg, for botching up Signal?
No, I think I don't know what the reason is for the move, but I think that he's a strong leader. I think these cabinet meetings we're watching, it's like you get a front row seat. I think they're substantive. They're talking about good things. I think there's good things happening with the administration, with their cabinet, with Mike Waltz. When Waltz moves over to U.S. Ambassador for the United Nations, that's not a small job. That's not a giveaway. There's a lot of responsibility there. And you're seeing a lot of that shuffling. And I think what that is I think they're pushing up against a lot of status quo. I think there's a lot of resistance going on in Washington, D.C., as I think you would imagine if you're trying to, change the trajectory or drain the swamp or whatever you want to call it. So I just think that they're not going to slow down. If something's holding them up or if they think someone fits somewhere else, they're going to pivot, they're going to move. But the one thing Trump's doing right now is I just don't think he's letting any dust settle. And so if there's a decision to be made, he's making it. And I think that's the first story to come out was that it sounded pretty bad. He was getting fired. It sounded like he was getting fired. You don't get fired. That's minimally a lateral move to become the ambassador at the UN. So I think it's a better fit for whatever reason. And I think that ultimately the president has confidence in him or he wouldn't keep him in the role he's in. And they're just I think pivoting to the circumstances that they're confronting, which I think will continue to see resistance. It'll be interesting to see Walz go through a Senate confirmation. That he has to do that. So we'll see what happens.
So Trump's first term was really bogged down by bad decision-making and changing senior staff and cabinet levels. And so 100 days in, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, it's not good news that he's already shuffling the deck a little. What's also interesting historically about this move, though, is by moving Waltz, you see Marco Rubio having a double role. The last person who played both roles was Henry Kissinger. And it was largely seen that there are not equivalents. I'm actually not trying to make equivalents. I'm being more historic about it.
Sure.
It was largely seen as untenable for Henry Kissinger, again, because the two positions have some built-in tension to them.
Right.
And so when you have both hats on, even if I'm going to stick with Kissinger, even if you're a little talented like Henry Kissinger is considered to be, and remember, he did these roles both under Ford and Johnson. No, who's after Ford?
After Ford, it was
Johnson. Is that what the roles he's done? I should have
Ford
looked at it.
Carter beat Ford, so
yeah,
it was
so
Carter.
He held these roles for then Johnson and Ford,
for John.
and he was struggling with the tension between the two. So I thought
Nixon.
that was an
Nixon
interesting
and
thing.
Nixon.
I knew I was.
It's Richard
I was
like,
pulling up my
Milhouse.
president's-
That's where
Nixon.
I was
There we
like,
go.
why
Richard
am I
Milhouse
drawing
Nixon,
a blank?
Not
It's
LBJ.
too late.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. So the two Republicans there, and he had a hard time because of the slightly different. So again, I'm not trying to project.
And he
that,
also
but I
has a
thought it was
half a hat
interesting.
from you said that's sort of been rolled into it too. So he's got a lot on his
And
plate.
he's
got
the
a lot going on.
archivist. Did you know he's the archivist?
No.
I didn't know that
I
one. He's
didn't
that one
either.
too. Are these
busy.
permanent roles, or are they just like
I can't.
like interim?
It feels interim to me.
I do
I
too.
think
I
so.
think it's interim right now.
I think they've got to get him some help.
Look, I will tell you this. I think a lot of people on the right, conservatives, when you're putting this real atypical cabinet together, and I think one of the reasons why you see this cabinet the way its makeup is, I think there was a lot of internal struggles that Trump went through where he felt thwarted even within his own administration. So I think he's really pulling people that are not your typical working in Washington for multiple presidents or whatever. But what I have loved about Marco Rubio is he seemed more of a Washington establishment type because he'd been a U.S. Senator for quite some time. I just love, like, when there was that face-off between Zelensky and Trump and J.D. Vance in the White House, and you look at Marco Rubio, and his face is just stone cold. He just doesn't have any emotion. And I know what's going through his mind. It's that, when you get to that moment, there's been a ton of negotiations. This isn't like we're not starting negotiations as all the cameras are going on and we're talking. This is
They're
supposed to be-
dropping bombs.
This is supposed to be like the put the cherry on top moment, and it is just all crumbling. And you just look at his face, and he's just looking like, and I know he's thinking, you got to be absolutely kidding me. This is going on. So I just think he's been very competent. I loved, he narrowed down in this last cabinet meeting, I'm not the Secretary of the world. I'm the Secretary of State for the United States. If it doesn't make America stronger, safer, or if it's not getting rich or doing all three, then we're not going to do it. We're going to do things that primarily are in the best interests of this country and serve the country and can have other interests, but those are going to be my priority. I just think he's doing a really good job, and I think it's why you're seeing that even if it's in an interim basis, some of his responsibility being broadened, because I just think he's not overly animated. He's not. I just think he's doing a good job.
One thing that I've enjoyed seeing, whether you like what the president and his cabinet are doing, is that we're seeing the cabinet together in a room again, which I think largely went away under President Biden. He wasn't having those meetings, and I think that people were kind of kept in different rooms just because that's kind of how things were getting controlled. So I do like seeing that the cabinet's there, they're all around the table and talking to each other. So that's got to be good, right?
I think so. Dr.
a lot of
Jill kind of
showmanship.
ran it the last time, and
Yeah,
so
I mean, what we know is the
seemed
meeting after
performative.
the meeting is what matters when you're on TV for the meeting.
Okay, let's talk about a little showmanship here in Utah, because the Utah GOP leadership elections are coming up in a couple of weeks. There's a lot of campaigning, at least publicly from one side, not from the other. Maura, as we're going into this, Rob Axon we've talked about before. He's been on the podcast with us, and he's seeking re-election. Phil Lyman is hoping to oust him. He has a lot of backing in a lot of the delegates who really thought that he should have won as governor. Where's this going to go?
You know, what's interesting about this one is I don't think we know. Maybe Greg will answer this question for us. But what's interesting is they have very different paths.
Yeah.
They are both, the delegates are very familiar with both of them, right? Like, this is not an unknown and a challenger. This is two challengers. And they both have baggage, but it's totally different baggage.
Correct.
And so this is, and the delegates know them. Now, what we're not taking into account, which I actually think we shouldn't, because I have to be honest, I don't think either of them are going to bring new people. But what would be the trick is to bring new people. The key to winning sometimes in those contentions in our party, you saw Orrin Hatch do this really well and defend. You brought a new group with you, and you trained them, and they were ready to go. Interestingly enough, even though Axum, he should know how to do that, I don't know that he's going to. And Phil has already done it and thinks his guys are already at the table. So I don't think they're going to grow the prospective voters that night. And I don't think anymore back in the olden days, Greg, you could call and slot a lot of delegates through the back door. I don't think that's going to happen that night. So they both have baggage, and they're both familiar to the delegates. I do think who's picked matters. Sometimes, to be honest, I don't know that it matters that much. The party goes about their business in the same way. I think these two men run the party very differently. Now, I'll add something, and this is an area Greg and I agree on. One thing that's interesting about the Republican Party in Utah is in many ways it's less critical and less relevant than the Democrats. The Democrats need the party to buy bulk postage and to have coordinated campaigns. Republicans, anyone who declares themselves a Republican in most of our districts and statewide can get elected without the party apparatus. Now, we have had parties that have made themselves relevant to candidates, but it's an interesting, position when you're in the supermajority. Sometimes your party it's not as critical that you lean on a party, but I do think they still tend to be often the main look of the brand sometimes.
I think a party chair is the worst job in politics
For sure.
by a lot. I think it's the most miserable,
Thankless job.
Yes, it is. It's a stick to beat yourself with, and I don't know who would ever in a million years want this job. And it's a three-ring circus, literally. And I think this applies to the Democrat Party as well. I think one ring is your grassroots, okay? And I think that they make up the heart and soul of your party. They're the caucus attendees. They're the delegates that get elected in the districts or in the precincts, and they're the worker bees. I mean, they work hard. The other ring is your donors. You got to have people that donate to your party so you can fund your mailers. And I don't think the donors look like the grassroots. They're different rings. Your third ring is your elected officials, and sometimes you'll have some of those. You'll have a crossover. Grassroots that are elected officials or donors that run with a grassroots crowd. But I think those three rings don't often intersect. And a good party chair knows how to interact in those three rings very, very well. I think that the Republican Party after this election for chair will exist in 24 months without regard to either of those candidates winning or losing. I think Rob Axon tries very hard to work in all three rings of that circus, and I'm unhappy with the way that the caucuses were run. I thought that for all the money that the donors in that ring
It was a hot
raised money for a successful caucus night, I thought it was an abject failure of a caucus night. We heard
And
this
an
for,
election night, interestingly.
well, and then we get to the convention itself, which again, where there was a lot of good fundraising that should have brought a lot of preparation and a pretty slick convention. It went till midnight. We used to get mad. I've been going to those conventions since '92. We used to really know that it harmed the convention when we were into the 6 o'clock hour because people from other parts of the state have to leave. They've got something on Sunday. They can't stay that long. You have a convention till midnight. I mean,
And it's a spring fever time when you want to be outside.
You sent those people that live in Washington County out the door because they cannot stay. They cannot. You've absolutely taken their opportunity to vote as delegates away from them by letting that thing go on and on and on until midnight. So it's hard for me to get excited about a chair when I think the caucus convention's probably, to Maura's point about whether you raise, if you're a candidate or an elected official, you raise your own money. The party isn't your lifeblood. So their real job is that caucus convention cycle. It wasn't done well. I don't want to see it that way again.
Are you a delegate?
I'm not. And but then you go to I think that Phil Lyman,
Can he play well in three circles?
No, I think he is. I think he is firmly and solidly in the grassroots circle. I think that's your worker bee circle. There's a lot to be said about being in the grassroots circle, but I don't think that the donor class or the elected officials. I don't know how he's running in those two circles, but in the grassroots side. I do think he has them. And by the way, they're going to be the delegates at that convention, so that gives him a hand up. Where I have heard some hesitation, even from grassroots who love Phil Lyman, probably voted for him, wrote his name in when he wasn't on the ballot, is that he was competing against a Republican nominee. And that does not sit well with some of our grassroots because, the Republican nominee is the nominee. And so they've kind of expressed some hesitation there. But again, I just think that I'm just looking, I think in 2 years, without regard to who wins that race, I think we'll still have a political party. And I used to say this.
You hope.
Well, I'll tell you, if someone doesn't think that the Republican brand means anything, then give it up. Run a race as an independent or one of these new parties that's showing up, and let somebody else become the Republican nominee and see if it was all about you when you won or if that brand meant something to the district that's electing you or not. So I think the brand will stay. I think the Republican brand means something. It's going to survive. however that election for chair goes.
Okay, I think they're having a debate on May 5th. Is it the 17th that they do their voting? So that we'll know in a couple of weeks how that goes. I'll be interested to see. Phil Lyman, I think, really has a lot of those delegates behind him. From what I hear, though, when he goes to a lot of the Republican fundraisers and dinners, he's sitting at tables alone, which tells me that he has problems in those other circles you were talking about. So I'm skipping ahead on our list for just a second because I think we're seeing some Republicans move to the United Utah and Forward Party, which we saw quite a few candidates on the ballot this last time around, making my job harder because there's only so many people and so many hours in a day I can interview. But they're joining forces and working together. Greg, is this going to hurt your Republican Party?
No, I don't. I think some people, out of feeling it's more practical because Republicans are a super majority, that they probably run as a Republican, even though they're not, the party platform may not speak to them. This may give them a landing spot, a party that may be more authentic to who they are or where they'd like to vote. I got no problem. I love a competition of ideas. If these parties want to merge and they want to create a stronger third party, we've been a two-party by tradition governance model, but if the Whigs want to come back, come on back. I don't mind it. I'd rather people run in a party, Democrat or Republican, or the new merged party, that believe
Did they come up with the name? I don't even know.
If they have a platform,
yeah,
and you subscribe to it, seek to earn their nomination. But if you don't do it because it's the more practical way to get elected, or it seems to be the odds-on favorite way. And so I don't mind. I think there's enough room in public policy to have another party, and I think all parties, whether it's Democrats or the Republicans, would do well to have people that really have their platform, believe what their party is advancing, and seek their nomination.
Before you get to have your say, I have to interrupt you for 1 second because people who are watching us on the video portion of this, you might have noticed that a tall security guard walked in. This is Maura's security detail.
I'm under duress in here. I've got X50 in here ready to throw me out of here if I get too rough on Maura here.
I got so tense.
I feel the look.
Yeah,
I don't feel safe with Greg was what I had to say.
Great. Just great.
So we've got, as our studio audience, the former police chief and boyfriend of Maura Carabello here with us. So thanks for being here.
We doubled up in our household. So Forward Party is what they're going to go with. They elected Michelle Quist as their chair.
Okay.
And she's a former candidate a couple of times over for the Republican Party. She has some chops. One of the things I like that they're doing is that they are, from my seat, they're serious about a platform. It's not a political machination. It's not a calculation about delegates. It's about choice. So as Greg said, that's great. Like if you're going to give people choices. One of the things that we know in Utah is that the reason the Republican Party has more delegates than an unaffiliated voter is because the Republicans took hostages, right? They closed their primary and said, unless you're with us, you're not out there.
People that were members of their party helped nominate
and they weren't persuasive or appealing
party.
Enough to just have us come. You had to sign us up and put us on a registry.
If I could give you some perspective on the hostage-taking description, when I was in Pennsylvania and I registered to vote as an 18-year-old, the clerk said to me very clearly, if you'd like to help decide if you want to help choose the Republican's name on the November ballot, become a Republican. If you want to be the Democrat that helps get the Democrat's name in November, be a Democrat. If you want to be a Libertarian, be that.
Remembers.
And I'm telling you, it was not hostage taking. There was no here's
or
what you have to do.
You can join the Democratic Party and vote for whoever you want. But here's the deal. So
again,
the Republicans, part of the Republican
candidate.
Strategy is close their primaries and force people to be Republicans. But what we know is unaffiliated voters who, granted, perform slightly right of center are who most Utahns identify with. So the Forward Party probably is pretty aligned with the average voter. Again, slightly right of center, but kind of want to be independent free thinkers. If they can come up with two things. One, their launch was really great. It was a 4-day story. So I'm always looking for how well they held the attention when they did the original thing. And they got great coverage. They articulated themselves. And they did a secondary press round, which is kind of hard for a fledgling, boring civic group. And then if they can come up with issues that Heidi's tempted to follow, like if they can grab our attention and get enough momentum for being serious about attracting people based on ideas, they're not going to win anything soon. But one of the things you saw in this year's cycle that I haven't seen before is some really aggressive attempts by the United Utah Party to compete on the ballot. So I think there's an appetite for, again...
And they had some traction.
Totally. And again, I'm not saying they sweep the floor. Nobody's saying the big parties go away.
Yeah.
But I think there's some legitimacy to this. I think Michelle Quist will be a good leader for them.
I have a question. And so over the years, when I've been involved in party politics, I've known a lot of Democrats that would describe the politics of being a Democrat in Utah. And by their own description, and I would say like the Eddie Main, Karen Main, and others like Blaze. Okay. They would say you have in the Democrat Party, you had the wine and cheese Democrats, and you had they called the dirt balls. And it was just kind of the funny phrase. We're the dirt balls, they're the wine and cheese.
And are those the Bernie Sanders followers?
Well, that's what I'm going to say, is that when you see national politics now on the Democrat side play out, you are seeing kind of a wealthy billionaire class, and you see a very kind of the Bernie bro, or kind of this side of it. You're seeing the working class, the unions. There seems to be a kind of that same difference inside the party. To this new party, is there one of those blocks within the Democrat Party in Utah that you think would be more attracted to this third party?
Well, I mean, to be candid, the Democratic Party has winnowed itself down so much that I think they're really attached to the brand. So I don't know that you're going to see much bleeding there, in part because
like Karen Main or Carol Spackmoss get some grief, and some others. Remember?
Right. But like and you and I are the same age, but you went back in the time wheel 35 years. And so I don't know that we can do a direct comparison. But what I do think is interesting is I think there's more room for growing and more room for grabbing.
An answer to this question.
No, I don't think you're going to grab it. I don't think you're grabbing
this isn't 35
the
years ago. I'm talking about even the Bernie Bros of 16
okay, let's
really
just
came
be
into your party.
spoken about here.
They did.
The votes up for grabs are the Republicans.
You don't think any of the Democrats want to moderate
Not
one
in
way or the other?
significance.
Okay. All right, it's a question.
I think Trump is driving some of this new growth of parties, because I think some people who just haven't liked how far right in some ways it's gone, they are looking for some other options. And I think it's probably
centrist Republicans
that.
are the ones that are trying to figure out who they are. Democrats, I think that where the Democrats are failing right now is to provide leadership, right? There's not a clarion call by anybody. So yeah, you're seeing schisms in both, and this is going to stay because it's a byproduct of social media in many ways.
Let's talk about Republicans and all their winning they're doing right now in the state of Utah. Just kidding. Election officials have verified more than 146,000 signatures for the referendum to overturn the Utah bill restricting bargaining rights for public unions. We've been talking about that. I think last week they turned all of them in, but now they verified them. So that was a big lift for them, Maura.
Huge. It's a big deal. And I said this last week, I'll say it again. To have 320,000 voters, whether they were registered, whether they qualify or not, and I hate to give Greg a compliment, but when he was speaker, he actually had an awareness of what people were saying. I hope our 104 legislators are not just reacting negatively. I want them to be a part of the discussion. It's a complicated discussion. I hope they have some wisdom in just seeing the 320,000. But Heidi, to your point, what we know this week is they've qualified. Yeah. The other thing that's interesting is if I can read that map well, it's 17. I think they qualified in 17 Senate districts.
How many do they need?
Yeah, the Tribune did a good job putting a map up there.
So I think they're 2. If I'm counting right, I think they're 2 over. They have a 2 Senate district buffer.
You'd need to lower that 8% over threshold in 3 Senate districts to prevent it from being on the ballot.
And in a lot of them, they were performing at 135 plus. They had a couple of heavy blue districts where they were like 195% of the threshold. So you're peeling off, I think, in districts that have about 30% overage. So that's quite a few. They have a seasoned team, they have a smart team, and they also get 15 more days than the signature gatherers do. One thing I meant to do my research on, and I didn't, so our listeners who are smarter than us can do this. But the tradition has been that when you reach the threshold, the clerk verifies and stops. Now that you have a repealing period, it's interesting because if I were a proponent, I would be like, you go ahead and keep counting.
No, right?
And they clearly have, because they're showing in some districts that some were at 196, right?
Yeah.
But they also showed that when the deadline was met, let's say in a district that didn't qualify, their clock stops. But I did wonder, are the clerks going to let them keep going? Did they count every single ballot? Or did they verify
district?
every signature is a smarter way to say that. Did they verify every district or every signature turned in? Or they clearly went over the threshold, but back in the olden days when we were submitting, kind of when you hit your mark, you were done because there was no repealing period.
Yeah.
In the same manner that it is now.
I think they would need to
keep
verify
going,
them
right?
all. Yeah, because if you had everybody at the exact 8%, and then any district, any Senate district would be to get below that threshold would be the same. Would be the same number, and that wouldn't be what the law was intended to do. What I like about a referendum law is, unlike some states where they can pull every signature from the most populated counties or areas, so you'll have in Colorado potentially Denver or that area, that region, putting qualifying for something on the ballot. This is spread out a lot more. It's a difficult process to actually pull off. So it does speak highly of those for those signatures they were able to get. And you have to have that cross spread of support across the state of Utah, which I think it's a percentage of the number of people that voted in a presidential year. Is that how it works?
Yeah.
So they're trying to find the highest voter turnout of a respective Senate district, 8% of that. And I do. I think it's an even-handed way. It's hard, but it should be hard. Just like passing a bill is harder. It's easier to kill a bill than it is to pass in the legislature.
Do you think the reform group, will they be able to successfully take enough ballots off the signature?
I'm skeptical. I don't think so. But I don't know. I'd have to see those. You have to pick 3 districts, Senate districts, that you think you can bring.
You could go after,
or 4. Or 4. I mean,
or 17. You have to get to 14. Yeah.
Sure. But 14. You want to see where you're getting your momentum.
So I don't know. I've heard that they've had, like you said, they have a lot of signatures. So I don't know that they're. I don't have any direct information to know yes or no, but I know they were looking to see what those thresholds look like, obviously, to be able to pull them off. But I think it's been a very robust reaction or return from the people gathering the signatures.
Because we care if our firefighters and first responders can collectively bargain.
Yes, I know.
Only in Utah,
do you want to scoot up to the microphone and talk about first responders?
No, how am I supposed to say this with a former?
Let me
You're
tell
setting
you
me
why.
up. You're trying to get me in trouble.
He was an administrator. He crushed the unions every chance he got. We're a divided household.
You're tempting to
She's tricking me.
We are a divided household.
No. This is a trap. She wants me to think I'm in a safe space to say something, so then Chris can attack me.
That's right.
You're
Make eye
just setting me
contact,
up.
Greg.
Yeah,
I just turned your mic up in case you want to scoot up and talk. Speaking of robust reactions, the Trib had a couple things I was paying attention to this week, and they had an independent investigation where they were looking into Utah State University. We all have college students right now. We know how expensive it is. It's getting more and more expensive for families to figure out how they're going to pay for college. And you're thinking, I really hope my university's using my money wisely.
Yes.
And some of the things they found with the former president just made me think, what the F are we doing? So some of the things I'm like, okay, I can understand this, but they were looking at Utah State President Cantwell. I'm sorry for saying the F word. She spent $660,000 on new cars, an apartment in Salt Lake City during the legislative session, an office bidet. That's where I was like, who do you think you are, the Queen of England?
Lost. As soon as you went to the bidet, I was like, yeah, I was there on the car in the apartment. And
she saves money on toilet paper, which I like. And I understand if you love a bidet at your house, but I'm like, do you really need to spend taxpayer dollars and the tuition money that's coming in on a bidet in your office? I don't know. So I'm looking at some of these records and thinking, do we need to be looking more closely at how leadership is spending money at our universities, especially when we're looking at possibly laying off professors or getting rid of programs? What say you?
Well, I looked at these and I thought, I don't know how you get up to $660,000 for a car and an apartment in Salt Lake during the session, and that maybe the office bidet is really expensive to put into an office. I don't know, but it was
$750 off Amazon.
So, but
that's how much the bidet was.
I don't know how you get
not a bad deal.
I don't know how you get to $660K, but it's a big number, especially if it's for nice to haves. But the bidet is the one that was like, that just seemed to be excessive to me. So, and I liked working with President Cantwell. I wasn't in office or I don't remember being the speaker working with her, but I did later.
She's only
work
been
with
for
her.
18 months.
Yeah, so
She was short before she
but
left.
I did
She-
have
she
some interaction
busted
with her.
out.
It was all positive. She was a professor. She kind of came up from the ranks as someone that was a professor there, which was a great way for someone to be a president of that university. So I was really surprised by these expenses. She wasn't someone that I thought would be cavalier.
I was
I thought
surprised
this was-
that she had a driver. I'm like, do our university presidents have drivers?
I think a lot of them do. Her argument was that she worked, like that because she was commuting down to Salt Lake, she would have one of the security guards at the institution drive down, and then she would bring people with her and have meetings, or she would be on her computer. I'm just telling you what she said, that she was using it she would sit in her Suburban, and she would not lose that commute time. She would work during it. That makes a little sense because you're driving an hour and a half. The one thing, so I have mixed on this because I had the same reaction, but when I read the story lacked a little context, because one of the things was they made this big hoopla about, oh man, she bought, I can't remember, $186,000 worth of furniture for her residence. Well, all of our big universities have an official residence on the campus.
Yeah.
And one of the expenditures was for cubicles. And I'm like, well, okay, that's not a bidet. She bought cubicles because the staff is working on a residence. So I wish that this story would have criticized the nice to haves,
Yes.
but not thrown
But there
in
are have-to-haves.
the have to haves.
Look.
And the other thing it didn't do is I have no idea what anyone else spends. So this seems like a lot. Here's what
it
I'm
was
worried
hard to-
about.
There was no apples to apples in there, and I didn't know if they got new furniture for every
Yeah.
president or if it was 50 years later and it smelled like cat pee, and they're like, we need a new couch.
Exactly. But the one thing I do worry about is our legislature's reflexes. So on face, this should be looked at. No doubt about it. I think all of us are like, what the what? But our legislature tends to want to now run a bill that says they get to approve anything over $5. And I've had enough of Republican big government. So at most, the legislature should do nothing. But if they have to do something, just say, okay, you have to show it to us. Like, let people be better. Could we just get a little common sensey? This seems ridiculous to me. I like that we're focusing on it, but I do not want to see 7 bills and legislative control over this. I want to see a more practical way to say, let's not let this happen again.
If I were
Isn't that
a
why we have a state
legislator,
auditor?
what I would hope,
They can look
what
at
I
this
would
stuff?
hope is what you'd want to know is, because Logan is far away, and all the reasons you gave in terms of doing work while you're in commute and where it is, Logan is not where, if you're the president of the University of Utah, what it would take to commute to the Capitol.
Okay.
So there's a difference there. I'd like to know what those differences look like for presidents of public institutions. And so then you can start to get a grasp of whether these are have-to-haves
Outrageous.
or nice-to-haves. Bidet, I'm never getting there on that. I'm just never
I
getting
don't
there
know.
on
Once
a bidet.
you go bidet, you don't go back.
I guess,
hear.
because maybe because I'm
agree.
just a
I agree.
Neanderthal. I don't use one. I don't
Yeah.
appreciate how important they're supposed to be in your
Yeah,
life.
my grandma
But-
always had a bidet, and I
But
tell you
I'm
what,
just
it's
telling
the
you,
way to go.
that one I
Did
just
you
can't
use it
even
at her
get my
house?
head around.
Loved
So.
it.
Left it.
But I do think that what you really want to do is understand this better, and you might find that other presidents got a lot of bidets going too. You
Exactly.
never know.
But let's just be practical about it. Let's not legislate the heck out of this. Let's just enough.
Let's be
It
reasonable.
did seem ridiculous.
Yeah.
And she was only here for 18 months.
It was short, and she was off. She made, I think, $500,000, so she had a good salary.
She also
too.
made a chunk of change.
Yes,
Yeah.
so she's off
And
to her
she
next gig.
left us for
Yeah,
Washington.
but there's nice furniture in the house now. The governors of Utah, Idaho, and Wyoming have signed a tri-state agreement to strengthen regional energy collaboration. There's been a big focus nationally on down to the Utah legislature. We're seeing even some of our municipalities where they're starting to talk about what we need to do about our energy future. So the good news is we're talking about water right now. We're talking about energy when we haven't before. Is there anything specific and important that came out of this, Maura, that you're like, okay, we're heading in the right direction?
I like this, and I always get nervous when I like things like this. I feel like I'm missing
You
something.
should be
There's
nervous
something
because I
else.
like it, which means that you should really feel
I mean,
uncomfortable.
The devil in the details is that if we are chasing energy for big companies to make more money, and if we're chasing it for dollars, I'm concerned. I don't think so far we've shown ourselves to only have that goal in mind. It seems to be energy independence. It also seems to be that we could be a net plus generator. I also will tell you that as an environmentalist, I love small modular reactors.
Yeah.
I like
nuclear
small.
energy's on
now,
the list.
big nuclear scares me still, small nuclear, and we're really fast tracking that. And as long as it has a nod to the natural world around us, and as long as it stays for citizens and for healthy businesses, it's not that I don't want. But if we're just chasing the dollar on this, I think in 70 years, our kids will be cursing our name. So far, so good, though. I love it. I also love governor, hats off to the governor, who held a really good day on Tuesday talking about energy, particularly about nuclear, and the fact that we attracted these two governors, Wyoming and Idaho, to come. I thought that was really cool. So far, I think we're showing leadership and showing that we can be good. If we get too singular-minded about a bunch of big data, big boxes, and we're not benefiting, just some other mega corporation, that's when policy gets into trouble.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is a few years ago, I feel like Idaho was starting to look at some of those small reactors with nuclear energy. And I think we were supporting them looking at it, but we weren't supporting ourselves being part of the process. We're like, cool, you guys try it out and let us know how it goes. But now we're working together.
One of the things our cool friends have that we want to be cool enough for is, well, other than potatoes, is the Idaho National Lab. And it's a regional lab. Yep. And we really do want the Idaho National Lab to love us. And we want them to love us more than they like Idaho.
So recording them.
So yeah. I do. I think energy, I think AI, there's just, energy is becoming a bigger and bigger issue.
Can you make your mic closer to your mouth?
Yeah, how about that?
You can bring it towards you. You don't even have to move
probably
yourself.
not used to professional radio.
I think that, yeah, I know. I don't know. We got to get an upgrade in the equipment. That's what we got to do. No, I think that energy is becoming more and more vital on how you generate it, what the cost of that's going to be, the emerging economies that are coming up that like AI and other things that use a lot of power. Rocky Mountain Power is not a Utah-born company by itself. It is Pacific Core. It is a regional power company. They have Warren Buffett's, whether he's on the board or however they're directing things, they are in California. They're in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, and Utah. You might find that their corporate mission may not align with Utah. I think Utah its economy sectors are diverse. I think it can be very independent on its natural resources, on its different agriculture or tech or manufacturing. We have a lot of different sectors of our economy. The more independent Utah becomes in these areas, I think the better we are. I think that it's a no-brainer that if you have the ability to generate power, if you have the ability to find some strength even regionally with some of these other states like Idaho and what's the other one, Wyoming, I see no downside to that at all. I don't. It's far better than answering to a corporation and its shareholders who may have a completely detached mission or objective for that company versus what Utah would have for itself. I don't know what the story with the big blackouts in Europe were, but there's a lot of different
Spain
narratives.
And Portugal, yeah, that was nerve-wracking.
Some were saying that their renewable energies were not up to speed with what they had traditionally. They turned off their more traditional power sources, and that the renewables weren't able to carry the load. That's one. I've heard other issues of hacking. I don't know what the issue is, but what I do...
Hacking, solar flares.
Solar flares, whether it's environmental. I don't know what it is, but I'll tell you this. If you're on a grid, and I saw some stats where it came dangerously close to having a much larger cascading effect in Europe, which would have been really, really bad. The more we can, whether it's harden the grid, put our power together, be more centralized here as 3 states, I think it's all upside.
But the good news is Utah's doing that. I mean, you can't abandon California just because of their access to some of the energies.
You gotta run fast and far from that state.
They have a buying market.
Guys, my kids live there now. We have to support
them. We like queso. We like their
vacation.
We like their buying market. But I will just say there are many cities in Utah, and many of them are UAMPs. We work a lot with UAMPs. These small cities that are doing a really good job turning to a model that Greg's talking about, where they have a central buying marketplace. They now you have to have demand on day the next day. We're now tracking demand in households by 5-minute increments. You can turn up and down. The reason that's really cool is you can lean into renewables like wind and solar. but they're not durable, right? They're not 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you can use solar and wind, and then when you need a little zhuzh up on natural gas, but it allows us to use on all of the above, but still be environmentally friendly. So Greg and I can live in the same place and not argue all the time, because I get my environmental itch scratched, but I also get, frankly, the durability that you need right now. And until particularly we find another alternative, clean, durable energy, which is why I'm high on nuclear. But like Utah's already having many smart municipalities who are saying, yeah, we're going to do advanced day metering. And we're going to now, we have to file and we're going to have to tell people what we need. It's a little bit of a burden on the public utilities guys in your cities. So honestly, if you're listening, be nice to your public utility guys, because they are working their cans off.
And look at your cost for power.
Unplug your electric
Look at your
Tesla.
cost for power compared to other states. It's low. It's it's and that becomes an economic engine too. When you have affordable energy in your state versus it being overly expensive, that can draw more investment or more manufacturing, more business. I just think if you have an emerging economy or a more emerging workforce, which we do, which is an asset to have young people that are looking to enter the workforce, which a lot of states are aging and shrinking, you got to be able to accommodate it. How do you accommodate it? You got to have a power grid and a way to do that makes sense. And I think it's all upside. I do.
All right. It's scary when you guys agree.
I know, it makes me very nervous.
I'm uncomfortable in my own skin.
So you guys agree on power and essentially something that will float you up the canyon together. So what do you call that? A gondola. My brain's tired. It's Thursday. What is that word?
Floating up,
Yes.
Yeah, we agree on two things. Look at us.
I know.
I want
coming together.
I want a cog rail up the canyon.
Yeah, you did, but
do.
we decided we're not going to
I
blow
want-
up
I
our
still
mountain
like
for
that.
$2
Not gonna
billion.
happen.
I love that.
Final issue of the night really quickly is that we finally made it to Trump's first 100 days officially in the books.
All it's been.
It's all it's been. It's felt like forever and so
better
short
hang
all
on.
at once. There's nothing constitutionally that says it's important to have 100 days. They don't have to report to Congress, but I think that we look at it because we like to grade people on things, and so 100 days is a nice time to say, how are you doing? Trump loses power every day he will be in office. He'll become a lame duck. So those first 100 days were important, Greg. Do you feel like, as a Trump supporter, that he has accomplished everything you hoped and dreamed of, or has there been too much turmoil, tariffs, and whatever else going on?
I'm telling you that I think he understands. I think there is a pace and that to his administration that we haven't seen before. I think you're seeing things move very quickly.
Fast and furious.
I think that, I think the border situation, how well that's been handled and how you don't see the same problems, although we were told you needed a whole new set of laws if you were ever going to change anything. It didn't happen. There are no new laws, but there's a completely different situation happening along the border, both borders, that and Canada. I think I don't think that our trade relationships, partnerships globally were serving the everyday American. I don't think it was a good trajectory for this country to have 96% of rare minerals extracted and processed in China, not making any of our own pharmaceuticals. We've lost a lot of industry in this country over time. I think it is not going to end at the end of business today to realign this entire planet and your trade relationships. I think there is a time horizon for all that. I think they understand it. I think they're moving quickly. I've seen from the New York Times, it's down to China is the only one that's being super hostile. Everybody else is trying to get to the table to find something that makes sense for both, for both trading partners. I love it all. I think all of this is good.
Luckily, we don't get anything from China. Just kidding.
Yeah, we get a lot, and you know what? If we can wean ourselves off some of that, if it's textiles and things that we don't think those industries would come back to the United States, but you can have stronger relationships with Vietnam and Malaysia and other things. How could we be against that? I think that's a great opportunity for the state. Listen to Ford Motor Company's CEO talking about how they make cars here, and they do better than their competitors in terms of making cars in the United States. But he says he supports the president's policies, his change, and a lot of the pause and a lot of the things they're doing are helping their competitors. But they're bullish. They're bullish on what's going on. I am happy, and I think that he knows. I think there's a transparency to this presidency that I haven't seen before. I wouldn't have known that the Panama Canal was ever an issue. I wouldn't have known that Greenland, in terms of its strategic location and our national security, was an issue. I didn't know China owned a port at the beginning and the front end and the back end of the Panama Canal. We know these things. We're talking about these things as everyday Americans because those things are being, I think, shared with the American people at a higher level than you've seen in the past. So I think it's good. If I've heard any complaint, it's that people want more of what he's doing to happen faster. But I haven't seen Washington move even this fast before, so
You
I'd
haven't
like
heard
it
anyone.
faster.
What about the tariffs, though? Are people upset about that? Because I think people at home are worried about what they buy and it getting more expensive.
I don't think that 9%. I think if your
We should
401k
kill
or
fast fashion, though.
if your stock portfolio is keeping you up at night, but your 9% inflation during the Biden years, or your mortgage rates going sky high, or gasoline costs being as high as they were while we were being told you had money dysmorphia because the economy is doing so well. Thomas Friedman said from the Times, you're just not sophisticated enough to read the charts to know how well you have it. I think those times were a lot harder. If you're going to retire today and you need to cash out that 401k, yeah, there's a problem there. I'd tell you to find a new financial advisor if you're still in a stock market that can move around and you're ready to retire today. But I'm telling you that money game is for a different class of people. If you're really worried about the stock market itself, I think people are worried. They're not worried about the brand new iPhone they're going to buy every year. They're worried about the groceries they pay for. There's the fuel they put in their car, the rent they pay, or their mortgage. Those are the real costs. I think that this realignment has to happen so that jobs happen, so that people can live. And I think there is going to be a patience. It's not going to be forever, but I think that people understand you don't change your global trade partnerships overnight. And I think what's his pause? 90 days he's given himself on those tariffs. I think that there's a lot of good things happening. We got to let the man cook. Let him go. Let's see what he can do. The stock market's time horizon is the next 20 minutes. It's never going to be happy for them. But I don't think the status quo, if we'd never touched anything, was going to produce a very good outcome either.
Trump is your president, too. Is there anything he's doing that you're like, wow, high five? God bless America.
Yeah, so no. But when I first moved to Salt Lake, the first house I bought was a 1902 second owner. I bought it from Brigham Young's great
That's
granddaughter.
wild.
Cool.
Yeah, that's just an aside. But as we were, fixing it up, I was young and wanted to fix up a home. What I learned is that pretty much any meathead could demolish things, and that subtraction is not that hard. And tearing things apart is quick, and it doesn't take much talent, and it doesn't take much thoughtfulness. So that's my point of view on the first 100 days. Yep, he came in with a hammer and a mallet and wrecked a bunch of things. We have not to see. Now, what we do know, the data is showing us that our economy grew at half the rate this quarter that it did in the last quarter of last year. We know that we're atrophying. We know that our inflation is going up. We all know that indicators at the grocery store, which is why Trump was elected, is that our prices were too high, are just getting higher. But that'll play itself out. And Greg and I both agree on that. That'll just play itself out.
Eggs were $7.49 for 18. They're $5.32 today.
Our economy is 1.8 and it was 4. So I'm just saying all he's done is tear things apart. And what I know is it doesn't take much talent to tear things apart.
Do you give him any credit for the border? Because that is one thing that seems to have changed. If you were to deport someone now, they're probably not going to walk back in the country.
He is approached more litigation. He's losing. The two of the big things that he's deported American citizens and isn't doing anything about it.
He's not deporting American citizens.
I let you talk. He lost in Texas
I get
today.
second answer next time.
He lost in Texas today about throwing in our 1800 laws. Texas told him no to that. And birthright citizenship is about to be iced. He's losing all of his major plays. So what has he successfully done? Absolutely, he stopped in migration. He hasn't solved our problems at all, but he has stopped in migration. And he, being as erratic as he will continue to strike fear in any immigrant that wants to come. I'm not so sure that's Utah's position. And I'm not so sure it was done thoughtfully and considerate. So has migration from brown states that are nations south of us stopped? Yes, for sure. Has he called a war on brown people? For sure.
Oh, my goodness.
But I will tell you, so yes, we're not having immigration. But all the tests that he is doing of our migration system, he's currently losing in court. And all he's done the first couple. Well,
I'm waiting.
But like all he has done is show me that he can take a mallet to drywall. And I'm just saying there are a lot of meatheads who can do that. I'm looking for someone who wants to build a country. The other thing is, it's all about him. I have heard nothing about America. And that was my problem with him the first time. This is a narcissist who wants power, and I just don't have any interest in that.
I'm not going to go through it all, but I'll just say this. if anyone thinks that this was huddled masses in the millions that came over when the border was just walked away from and allowed for people to enter without any hesitation, any change, and you can see the video, we can see with our eyes. We don't need anyone to tell us what happened when you saw the masses of people that came in March of whatever year it was, like 300,000 encounters. It's down to like 9. I'm going to tell you that the cartels not only controlled all of that movement of human beings, of drugs, we're now learning they got into the oil business. They're illegally smuggling crude oil, natural gas
to a family on the East Bench of Utah.
That
Did you see that
has
story
a local
this week?
story to it, to the tune of $300 million just for one family or one business that's here. These cartels for 4 years have been allowed to grow where they're the only supply chain in this country that actually profited beyond anyone's belief. So when we say this is a war on brown people, the war is on a cartel. Multiple cartels that have taken a market share into this country and have claws into this country, I think, more so than we even understand right now. And that was the big problem during the Biden's years that we have got to reverse.
Cartels,
and it is scary
Chris is
to
not
think
going to be able to stay
how
off the mic on
close
this,
they
but
are,
I'll tell you,
how
cartels
close they are
up.
to the governments that
Cartels
they're
are
in too.
sophisticated big business. These are not 10-year-olds crossing the Rio. So, like, I appreciate that you think that the 10-year-old
They charge
family
them to
member
get across.
is
They don't
is
let them
doing
go
this,
across for free.
But cartels are taking private jets and landing them in America. And you want to know why they're here? Because our demand for drugs is
The
so
people that
high.
the only people they come across are the ones they allow.
Trump is doing nothing to stop organized crime and cartels.
Oh, the heck he's not.
Doing a
the
lot.
arrest of the 300 million of
identify-
stolen crude alone.
Your
just
statistics
here.
on crime don't follow.
All right, Chief
crime
Burbank is in
was
the
not
house.
a problem.
Okay.
All
Chris
right.
spends a
Law
lot
and
of his
order.
time.
Cartels.
He couldn't
So
resist.
where I'm going to debate is, right, the cartels, while they control the access routes for the people crossing, those are not the people that are bringing the drugs, the crude, or anything else in, right? Yeah, we are absolutely stopping individuals from coming across. We are talking about tonnage, not what some dude carries in his pocket across a river. These are boats that are going around. These are planes that are going around.
Yes.
There's been no action to stop any of those. And the arrests that are being made are not of cartel dealers. The other thing we need to think
Coyotes, the people that allow them to show them the ways to get across. You're saying that is not touching, cartels touch none of that.
people, yes, because
Okay.
they make money off it.
Yes.
They make a lot more money off of the drugs that come into the country.
Sure.
A lot more money off of smuggling people to do other things other than just come in the country, right? We are talking about people who are controlling farms of crops, of marijuana.
I think they diversified amazingly.
Oh, no,
I think they
but
have. You're
what
right.
we
but
need to
I'm
think
not
about-
saying it's one or the other. I'm saying that it's a multi-pronged criminal criminal enterprise.
Oh, without a doubt. But this is a criminal. I liken this to Target. Target loses over $1 billion a year in shrink, and they're still very profitable. Do you think
That's how much is stolen every year?
Do you think impacting the people crossing the border has any impact on a cartel? They're not even feeling this in their pocket. They write that off like it's tomorrow.
The DEA agent that was here, that was special agent in charge, that was here when I was speaker, he was telling us that many of the mules, many of the people that were moving drugs in Rio Grande were people that were even brought up here on false pretenses. They thought they were coming for agriculture jobs, and they had to work off and sell drugs for the cartels. And we were told that it was a very sophisticated operation using the people on the ground, the individuals, to mule those drugs. They were people that this agent told me would be in a suit and you would think was a businessman working in Salt Lake City, but they are part of this organized cartel who use these very individuals, and they have to work off whatever it is they're charged to cross, or they have to. So it seems to me, Chris, that they are into human trafficking, they're into drug trafficking, they're into oil and gas, you name it. I just don't think that you can say someone who's immigrating here is somehow doing
Greg,
it independent of those cartels.
Listing the
I think they're
closing
involved.
a border crossing has solved problems. I'm just saying, no, the problem is with the cartels and closing the border crossing,
it
which is
stops
what they're
them.
touting.
Yes.
Doesn't stop anybody but low-level crime. This didn't stop a cartel.
How
at
would we
all.
know that they've gotten into the oil and gas business if not for the recent arrests that are happening just this last week?
Doesn't mean
that
we're
means that
stopping them.
administration is working on that. I wouldn't have known. I've been saying
Are you
human
talking about
trafficking.
the Salt Lake arrest?
Well, that's the local, but there's national stories. Secretary Besson came out today with a statement about it is the most profitable of the cartel's illegal activity, the smuggling of oil and gas and fentanyl. They added the three together, oddly.
I hadn't thought about smuggling oil and gas till this week.
Because this administration is working to stop these
haven't
cartels.
Stopped
or
anything,
it wouldn't
Greg.
be.
They
It wouldn't be in the news. We wouldn't know about
a
it.
cogent plan at all. They're just saying it exists. You keep talking about results. There have been zero results except
arrests?
stopping people at border crossings.
You're stopping very low-level individuals that are not impacting the overall distribution.
I think that's what we see. I think there is a much more comprehensive effort to stop these cartels.
I hear about it, and I hope there is. But
these arrests, I think, show something.
They have not arrested any of those people at a higher level.
I do wonder how long it takes for the flow to come in. When we see fentanyl arrests, because we're seeing a lot of them right now, obviously, I don't know how long does it take for something to get in the country, and we're busting like the small guys on the streets here. Have these been in the country for like 6 months, 3 months, a week when these busts happen?
Wow. So the amount that we're talking about, right, the biggest bust you ever seen is 20 kilos.
Yeah.
Right? When was the last time you saw a train load that actually was taken down?
I can't remember.
In order to meet the demand that we have in this country for fentanyl alone, it's not coming in a car. It's not coming in a truck. Right? It's coming in a ship or on a train. And while we talk about all the, no one's crossing the border, it's those people, right? The poor individual coming, the people we're deporting from
They're
down
preying
south.
upon them. They don't let them cross without their permission. Here's the thing. There's a family here. Everyone's innocent until proven guilty. So I don't know if they're guilty. But we can't say there's not arrests. This is one family that have been brokers in the oil and gas business. They are saying their arrests come. They have a Lubbock, Texas, or is it not? Is it Lubbock?
No.
It's,
I can't remember.
Anyway,
I can't remember the
they have a
details either.
Texas. They have
Yeah.
a Texas headquarters. This family, they live here in Salt Lake County. 300, according to the DEA and the FBI, the agencies that are involved, $300 million of smuggled oil, crude oil, that's come into the country that they have facilitated, that has been working directly with the cartels. And their press release said they knew they were working with the cartels when they were doing this. They started doing it in 2022. So we can't say there's been nothing. We've seen no evidence of any of this work. We have it as recent as this last week we've had it.
That's a great arrest.
Yeah.
I don't know of any others, but let's talk about like I-15 traffic coming up.
Right. That's a major pipeline.
It is, but not in the quantities that we stop and intercept, right? We take a photograph of some cop standing on, a trunk full of dope and think that we have some impact on what comes into the state of Utah.
Yeah.
That is written off as nothing, right?
Are you saying, though, that means it doesn't exist, or we're just not sophisticated
No, I'm
enough
saying
to catch it?
we're not focusing on the area we want to. We're spending all our time and resources on individuals coming across the border because we have, and I won't say it, but we have a problem with individuals and what they look like or where they may be from.
No.
We are not talking about the business of dealing drugs, the business of importing oil.
There is a ripple effect of when people come across. Where do they stay their very first night when they get here? There is a ripple effect societal. Completely.
Look at El Chapo and these people we've taken down. It didn't even cause the price of drugs to change on the street.
Chris, you cannot say that people did not feel, as we
too.
had the NGOs that were delivering people across this country, so they were relocating them, so every state felt like a border state. You can't say that the public didn't feel that. We felt that. I have a family that work at elementary schools that kids were coming with their even parents because they didn't know they couldn't come with them. And the kids with the individual education plan is being ignored because they had mass amount of kids coming that nobody knew was going to be there. Nobody had any plan, no budget for it. And this is happening all over the country. You can't say that they come in and it's all upside.
No. I didn't ever say they were all upside.
No, you're saying
but
that
what I'm saying is those are not the criminals that are now changing the impact on the drug trade.
We have a big problem with people coming in, impacting schools, impacting public safety, impacting jobs that are coming in through illegal.
Problem.
We have it. We're seeing it over the last 4 years.
99% of those people
grow.
had an upside. They contributed to our economy. They paid taxes. They followed the law. 99 immigrants. Immigrants into Utah.
You can keep living where you live and think that there's been no impact, but I'm going to tell you in Harriman,
friend, your town
in
Harriman,
Draper
has
in
not
the
seen
school districts,
an impact.
in the school districts where nobody knew what was going to happen,
you insist
there
on
is
this.
a measurable
I have talked
negative
to the Harriman
impact.
Mayor about it, and we handled it all. The upside for immigrants, the upside for immigrants has not been shown. You're talking about 0.003% of people.
No.
The rest of them are contributing, taking jobs we don't want, paying taxes, building family units, participating in church, participating in their communities. Immigrants
this is a yes or no question
good.
for both of you.
I like the energy
do you
tonight,
think,
and
do
it's
you
getting
think
late. You guys are on
that
fire.
the amount of people, and you can put it's in the millions. Some say it's high. I'm not going to peg what the millions are, but I am going to say millions with an S.
This is your final 30 seconds, Greg.
Do you think that was a sustainable public policy approach that the Biden administration used over the last 4 years? In other words, would you think that should have continued uninterrupted? Yes or no?
Having no path and no way to get either temporary or permanent citizenship is untenable. Biden did nothing to help that process, and Trump continues in that vein to do nothing.
Oh, he made it easier to come in. He said, just say the word asylum,
Biden
and you'll get a hearing in 3 to 5 years.
Opportunity failures about papering up a civil process for
do you
people
like
to
the
come
process?
and contribute.
So, but the influx of people that you're focusing on that you think is racist or unfair to say we shouldn't have it done that way.
I just gave you my answer. I think Biden.
No, you said they both did it bad.
I think Biden failed to.
But you got to pick a path because they did polar opposite things.
I don't actually have to pick a path because the problem is getting a better documentation
one is none,
system.
one is a bunch. So which one is the better one?
I will tell you, this country has failed for the last 50 years, no matter who the president was. America has failed at its immigration policy, and there are avenues in order to change that, that you have work visas, that you have visitation visas, that you have all. That's the overall change that I want to see, right? Then and I agree, you got to close down you got to seal the border, right? You can't just have anyone come across, right? There's avenues you have to take.
Yes,
but
I agree
these
with
are
that.
not the avenue, because we are only focusing on one small area, not all the process.
I think this administration is focusing on broader than that. I believe in a tall wall, but a wide gate. A wide gate.
And
I think that wide gate ought to come in.
Tomorrow.
Well, this is
How do I sign up to be on here every night?
All right, coming back. This has been fun. So, Maura, thank you for bringing in our special guest tonight, and thank you for finally caving and pulling up to the mic.
You
Go on the immigration, and you're going to have me sit in the corner?
Chris can't sit for that.
It's hard to listen to Greg and I without being
So
able
this
to
has been
respond.
fun. So thank you for being here. You're invited anytime you'd like. If you'd like to bring your wife in sometime, because if she's not going to listen, she may as well be a part of the podcast.
Get Queen Bee in here.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll see if my husband will come in too. We could get a couple extra mics in here. Bring some cheese dip. It'll be good times.
It'll be good.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Anything that you'd like to give us parting words of what we should be looking forward to, Maura? Greg?
80 degrees this weekend.
I'd like this. I'd like spring. I don't need to go from cold to summer, hot summer. I'd love to have some nice temperatures.
80 degrees is not crazy.
I want it in the 70s. We never got the 70s. When did we ever have a 70? We had a couple days. It was freezing yesterday. It's no
beautiful
good today.
right now, curmudgeon. Just like it's a nice time.
I like the 70-degree weather. I'd like to have that.
Well, thank you for hanging out.
I'm just going to keep growing my carbon footprint till we get it warm all year round.
Where it's the weather you like.
All right. Good times in town lines. Maura, Greg, and Chris, thanks for joining us this week. Tell your friends about us. Give us a rating if you like listening, and we will be back again next week.